Hey, good evening, gentlemen. Welcome back to another Let Loose Dog Talk. Hey, I'm Dennis with Regardables, my co-host Gabriel from GAM American Bulldogs, and our special guest Vito from Braveheart American Bulldogs. Now, what is it, Vito?
Samba Midwest.
Midwest. Oh, there you go. How's everything, Vito?
Good.
Okay, sweet. I'm just trying to log in here to share this stream. But how's your evening, gentlemen? How's everything, Gabriel?
And so far, so good. We made it another Wednesday. I don't know if anybody noticed, but we kind of missed. We had some things to take care of and some, but we're all good and we're here. So I missed everybody. Felt like a long time.
Right? Yeah. I know. I think last week, like you said, it was a lot of things that we need to take care of first. And but hey, we're here, right?
Absolutely, we made it.
Yeah. So Vito, let's get this going. Tell us a little bit, about yourself, who you are, what breed you breed, and go from there. And then we'll get further into the conversation with more questions.
Let's see. I've always been a dog nut my whole life. I'm really the only one in my family like that. Everybody else, my parents were from Sicily, so I'm a first generation, and they liked animals, but they liked other people to own them. They were kind of neat freaks. So I finally got a dog when I was like 9. I conned my dad into getting it, and that dog lived to be 18 years old.
Wow.
I had to put her down. Well, I tried to put her down when I was 27. They were telling me she was doing real bad, but that's another story. I used to own a restaurant, and so I worked all the time from about 25 to like 33, and I've always been into dogs, and I bought my first house and all that stuff, and I decided I didn't want to mess with being in the restaurant business, working all the time. So I started getting dogs, but I was in a Doberman's then, and I got a Doberman. Kind of had a bad experience. I knew there was a lot of health issues, but I got this dog that had this weird, rare form of diabetes. And long story short, they told me to put him down to 2 years of age. But he was fine. He just was crazy to drink water and pee all the time. So we just kept him in his crate and, didn't let him run to the house when we got home. And then at 3, I had to put him down because he had kidney failure. And I knew about American Bulldogs. I have a big library of dog books. And so I got my first American Bulldog I think it was from the paper. I drove to Illinois, which I'm like right on the Mississippi River. So you just cross the river and you're in Illinois. And I'm pretty sure it was like a standard dog I had. She was all white. She had pink eyelids and half a pink nose. She was cowhocked really, really bad. And she was like a crackhead. She was constant drive. And I didn't like her because she was a little too nutty. And she didn't attack my dogs. I had the Doberman, and I had a little cattle dog Chow Chow mix I rescued. But she hated the dog on the other side of the fence, and she busted out the pickets and grabbed the neighbor's. I think it was a Labrador, and caused all kinds of damage. I had to pay for all the medical bills, and so I just gave her to a guy that used to come in my restaurant, and he owned a farm. I told him all about the dog, and I had never heard back. And then after I had to put down the Doberman, I was looking. I was talking to Johnson, and he didn't have puppies. Actually, I had a deposit on a puppy from him, but they always died. Like I'd get to 5 weeks, and then he'd say, "No, I'm sorry, that one didn't make it." So he told me about a guy in Oklahoma that had this litter that was all mainly Johnson. It was from Peeler's Chief, which Peeler's Chief was a 100% Johnson dog from that Rebel Rouser dog. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was a nutty dog that he got had to take it back from people in New York. Anyway, they had bred it to this female called Dallas. And Dallas was from 100% Johnson female down from big buck blood that a guy in Oklahoma called Jack Keeler had bought her as a puppy from Johnson. And then they bred her to, there was a dog called Gator Red. He played a huge part in the Bully Dogs. He was a half and half Rip and Woody, which is a Johnson dog, and half this dog Sheena, who was an inbred Joe Painter dog, inbred Sergeant Rock. And do you guys know who Gator Red was?
Yes.
He was a kind of a really deep red and white dog. He was a weight pull dog, good looking dog. He was like 114 pounds. He was a weight pull champion and all this stuff. So this dog Dallas, she was a dog that the guy Peeler ended up placing with the guy local, this guy Jimmy Farrow. And he gave her to her because it was all brindle, except she had like one white stocking. Almost her whole face was brindle, except for a little white glaze on the nose. And back then, all Johnson bred dogs, Bully dogs, were mainly white with high-ball patches. There weren't a lot. If you had, people had them, but they just didn't sell them. They sold them as pets or gave away. Well, anyway, they bred her to Peeler's Chief, who was mainly white, and that's where I got my big dog. And then I was off and running with that dog. I still wasn't going to be a breeder, I didn't think, but then I took him to a show, and back then the breed was kind of it was different, at least from what I interpreted it. People were, you'd open at the back of Dog World, and it was all about what the dog did. They had so-and-so can run 100 miles with a 50-pound brick on his neck or something else. Just crazy stuff. It was all about what the dog could do, and it was all about how big they were.
Okay.
Bully, it wasn't even you didn't even say bully. And there, like even Gator Red today, back then, he was like, whoa, he's a bully dog. Wow. Now, if you looked at him, most people would be like, what? He's got a long muzzle. He's got a 3-inch muzzle,
Yeah.
Things were different. In Johnson's yard, he had some dogs with very long muzzles, that almost like a Great Dane muzzle, 3 inches, 4 inches, like that Rip and Woody. If you look up a picture of him, he had a long muzzle. He was a big, tall, 125-pound dog. And that breeding, Rip and Woody to Sheena, was kind of a repeat. They repeated that several times. They produced a dog called White Fang, a dog called Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
And those dogs really kind of shaped the early bully type dogs, because when they bred them back to the Johnson females, they got pretty bully dogs, actually a bullier type than what Johnson had. Johnson dogs, and when they first did that cross with the English Bulldog, I think he had quite a few, but I don't think those dogs lived more than enough to be bred once. The only real bully dog he had that lived a long time or lived a while to be bred was Red Machine. So that was kind of the beginning, and back then they were so expensive. It was $1,500 for Johnson called them the super dogs. If you wanted a regular American Bulldog, it was $1,000. But if you wanted a super dog, and I asked them, what's the super dog? They get 120 to 160. And I go,
oh, wow.
Holy shit. But I think that was kind of a sales thing. I'd never seen a dog bigger than the one I had, that first dog, the first male I kept, Rebel Machine Explosion. And he was 29 inches at the shoulder. As a matter of fact, I used to be embarrassed because that's out of the standard. The standard was like 28, I think. Although I think Johnson wrote a standard once that said 32 inches.
Oh, wow, man.
But I took him to a show when he was like 11 months old, or 10 or 11 months old. He was 125 pounds. And when I look back at pictures, man, he looked like a Great Dane. He filled out a lot. He looked great when he was finished, but he looked like a Great Dane. people, when I tell them he was 125, they'd be like, this guy's full of crap. So they had a weight pull, kind of a deer scale. You know, they hung it from a basketball hoop, and we stuck him in there. And yeah, he was 125, just like I told him. He got to be like 148, and he was really big, really mastiffy. He was a pretty good dog. His hips were decent. His elbows were good. He actually breathed really good. You know, he probably had a 3-inch muzzle, and he was undershot about 1/8 of an inch. But he wasn't. Things started turning towards bully. I mean, there were people that would look at litters, and if the dog wasn't undershot, they didn't want it. You know, like if you get a puppy that's 4 weeks old that has a good undershot, you know, they tend to, at 4 months they get the full undershot and their teeth are sticking out.
Yeah.
And people were like that because back then you would buy a puppy from a litter, and you don't know what you'd have when it was full grown. Some looked like mastiffy, some looked like a boxer, some looked like a pit bull, some looked like an oldie. You know, it just depended on it. And everybody back then in the 90s, like mid 90s, wanted the machine type of dogs, which Johnson got 1 or 2 generations off the English Bulldog. So they're like 10-25% English. And that
they're Calkin, she's in the UK. She's asking, I wonder why they have lost their size and weight. Is it because the AKC Bulldog in them?
I think what it is, I used to wonder too, because in the old days they had more big dogs. And honestly, looking back now, I think that like my dog that I got that was so huge, I think if we knew the real pedigree, there would be a couple St. Bernards or something really big, very close. You know?
Okay.
It just, I never got dew claws all the time, rear dew claws, but I got one female from him that had one rear leg with a dew claw. I had to have it removed. And that doesn't come from, it couldn't come from English Bulldogs. That comes from a St. Bernard or Great Pyrenees, some kind of Mastiff, usually livestock guarding type dogs. And it's just the way, you know, when you bred them back then, you had to watch it because you'd get, I did a breeding early on. You guys know who Tyson is?
Yes.
Tyson was a big, huge dog. He was probably 135 in good shape. He had a huge head like a jack-o'-lantern. He looked like he had an English Bulldog head on a Bull Mastiff body, and still kind of Americanish looking. Had a great temperament, and he was in Northern California. They sold him to a chiropractor guy up there, and there was a guy in California called Matt Boyd. He bred kind of hybrid American Bulldogs. He'd take the Heinz hog dog type dog and breed it to Johnson dogs. Well, he found that dog, and he was kind of like the pimp or like the stud manager, but he used it on all his dogs. And then his crowd, he wasn't into breeding a bully dog to a bully dog, because back then there used to be the standard people would say, "Oh, you can't breed them Johnson dogs. They all come out with long hair. They come out with the crooked jaws and undershot so bad their teeth stick out, and they can't breathe. They can't. Oh, they disintegrate. You know, they fall apart." That's what they used to say. They fall apart. They fall apart. Which maybe is true, but like looking back now, I think the breed was a composite back then. A recent, not 8 generations off of, you know, the same family of dogs. I think it was constantly something big was thrown in or something was thrown in. And then I think there was a period of time where people were throwing oldies and English, more English in there, and Dog de Bordeaux and Bull Mastiff. Not everybody, but it was being done because it became a race for the bully type. That dog, I was saying, that dog Tyson, I had a really nice daughter of his called Cassie, Casino Queen. And I only bred her one time. I mean, she was nice. She was big. She was bully. She was well-structured, great temperament. and I had bought a Tyson son, my daughter to a brother to my female Broadzilla. His name was Stash, and the dog was for sale. So I drove to Arkansas to buy him, and I was so geeked up. Oh man, I'm the first one. I'm going to do this half brother, half sister off of Tyson, dude.
Yeah.
Up to that point, everything that Tyson was bred to was like a standard dog. So they came out standard. You didn't get very many bully dogs back then with that kind of a cross. So I was like, man, nobody's ever done this. I'm going to breed half brother, half sister off of Tyson. The game is over. You know, I perfected the breed. You know, it's two great looking dogs. You know, if they look like either of the parents, they're going to be great. Well, yeah. Puppies, man, I'm telling you, I had boxers, I had pit bulls, I had straight standard dogs. I had one dog that got huge. He looked like maybe a Saint Bernard English bulldog. And then I got this dog. It was literally I had to replace the dog. He was like 55 pounds. He was like a little wicked little English. So back then, I don't know. That was a thing. You know, I remember I was friends with Jeff Daly back then, and when he got started, he bought 2 dogs from Johnson and put them together, and it produced a pretty nice litter. Of course, he didn't know. You know, he sold the puppies, and I guess he was having trouble selling the puppies or something, and he traded 2 puppies for an adult female, and the adult female was just like a weird, big, giant, scatterbred standard female. She had all kinds of stuff, Leclerc and Painter. Very little Johnson in her. And then he bred that to his dog Tug, and he got the same thing. He got, you name it, 5 different types in the same litter. And so then he was like, I'm not breeding nothing but 100% Johnson. This is garbage, blah, blah, blah. Well, that was going on all over the place with people that were trying to breed bully. It was just not consistent. The breed was very different, not very different, but it was different. There was a lot of cowhock dogs. And I'd go to a show and I'd see dogs in the ring that were so fat and so cowhocked. I mean, it was almost ridiculously cowhocked. Like, I don't know if you could even move a dog's legs like that. And it wasn't just one. It was a lot of dogs like that. There were some really nice ones too, but there was a lot of really funky structures. And a lot of people didn't know what it was, you know, like cow. What's that? I've never heard of cowhock. What's that?
Yeah.
So things have changed. Things have tightened up. The breed's gotten way, way bullier. And it shrunk. I think it shrunk because, I mean, I don't have any evidence. It's just my gut. I think the whole breed that they were trying to preserve for maybe 100, 200 years was, you know, I don't know how familiar you are with pit bull, game bred pit bull breeders. Historically, what they would do, you'd breed a litter and you'd keep all the prospects you like. You keep on a chain, and then at like, I don't know, 9 months or a year, they test them. And if they don't test game, then they get rid of them or put them down or whatever. And I think a lot of the big ones, they gave them to hog hunters or they gave them to a rancher that wanted a dog to keep varmints out of the chicken coop or whatever they wanted. So it became kind of a tradition in the South. And, you know, rednecks, you know, they got great ingenuity, and they started, you know, you didn't have the internet. You didn't even have a car. You didn't have air conditioning. You know, you had to breed to somebody's dog that was local. And a lot of the people that had them were hog hunters, and hog hunters have bay dogs and they have catch dogs. So you probably bred them to bay dogs, and then it became like a tradition to have a big white bulldog or a big brindle bulldog. And so they were trying to preserve that dog that was probably an outcrossed pit bull, early pit bull. But this was even before they called them pit bulls, before the name pit bull was, they were just bulldogs. So I think that's what the dogs were. So despite putting big giant breeds in there, I think they, you know, the gene pool goes back to the average of what the genetics are. And the average genetics were probably dogs that topped out at 75, maybe 80 pounds. And that's what they all went back to. So.
Yeah. So Peter, you So from 20 years ago, you've seen those dogs. You see the dogs that are now here, and you just mentioned that they had improved them stuff. But do you see 20 years ago, were there more? I guess you could call it. Was it a more of a like a dog, like a kind of like you said, game in them more than what we have now? That they're more docile.
Probably a lot of different lines have been selected to be less of a pain in the ass. But and my dogs, I try not to pick dogs that are too dog aggressive. If I had my druthers, I wouldn't have any dog aggression unless they get attacked.
Mm-hmm.
I've had dogs like that, but it's pretty ingrained because I think the foundation of this breed had a lot of those early imported bull baiting or dog fighting bulldogs that turned into the pit bull. I just think it was a continuation, but it was bred kind of like a purpose-bred dog. If your neighbor down the street had a really good plot hound or whatever, they bred him. And I'm sure there's people that were like, I just want a big dog, so they put a big Great Pyrenees in there or something, whatever. But I think people don't realize I have a little insight in it because I used to breed my own breed of alternative bulldog, the Alu bulls.
Yes.
So when you do that, when you cross different breeds, you think you know what's going to come out, and it's not what you think.
Yeah. Vito, do you feel that the more you let's say you line breed or inbreed on that, the more of that genetic comes out from the other breed?
It can. There's never a hard, fast rule. When I got into the dogs, I had that big giant dog, and then I got two half sisters off of this dog. Niga's Red Machine. He was colored like the Red Machine. And they were like 15, 16th Johnson. They were almost all Johnson. And they were the opposite of my big dog. They were real bully, small females, like 72 to 78 pound females, and they were super bully. They had crazy undershots. They were pretty nice dogs for the time. And then some weird stuff happened. The guy who owned Tyson had, first I met Jeff Daly at a dog show in Oklahoma, like in 1994 or something like that, 93, or maybe it was 92. I can't remember. I flew there, rented a car and drove to this thing thinking, I'd been going to dog shows my whole life. So I thought, man, can't wait. There's going to be 100 dogs there. I'm going to be able to see stuff I haven't seen. I got there. There was nobody there. There was like 20 dogs. Half of them I'd seen already. And it just wasn't a regular dog show. It was kind of like a picnic get together, and they had weight pull and a couple of things. Well, anyway, I met him. I thought he had a small dog, but I thought he was probably one of the nicer dogs, and that was Tug of War. And he had driven down with another guy that lived in Illinois that had a Tug of War son from him called Casper. He was a real small dog, like 72 pounds, real bully looking dog, super typey. And I started talking to them. I said, yeah, I'm from St. Louis, blah, blah, blah. And I said, where? And I told them, they said, well, you live about 20 minutes from me. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I flew there, and they drove all that way, and we met each other. Well, when I got home, I think that was before I got my big dog. I was looking for a dog, and he had a 7-month-old pup. And I think that was that dog Kodiak, who came from that litter I was telling you about, from that big standard bitch bred to Tug of War. And he was bully, but there was Great Danes and St. Bernards and boxers in that litter. But he called me afterwards when I got home, and he wanted to sell me that dog. And I told him, no, I don't want a 7-month-old. I want to get a puppy, and I want to socialize and train it myself, and blah, blah, blah. Well, that pissed him off, and he cussed at me and hung up the phone or something. I remember, I don't know what he did. It was rude. So I never liked the guy. I hated him. I thought, what an asshole. He's just, and he used to do that all the time. He cracked me up because we became kind of friends after that because another guy that I was friends with, he's like, I'm going to Daly's. You want to go with me? And I'm like, sure, what the hell? I go there and we were talking. I saw his dogs. He had a really nice female called Belle Star. And he was a lot nicer. He was being nice at that time. And he said, hey, I don't have a male to breed her to. I just have her dad. If you guys were to breed her, who in the United States would you breed her to? And this guy had some dog he was talking about, I think Turbo or something like that, was a hybrid dog. And I'm like, dude, there's a dog in California called Tyson. He's crazy looking. He has a huge head like a jack-o'-lantern. And he's never been bred to a bully dog, man. And that's when he was saying, no, I would never breed to anything but 100% Johnson. An experience with that litter. He had like 11 puppies and none of them looked the same. And so I had said that to him. And then, you know, a couple days later, he said, hey, Matt Boyd called me. He wants to use Tug of War. So I'm trading him studs. He's going to ship me Tyson. And I said, oh, I thought you didn't want to breed to Tyson. He goes, I'm going to give it a try. He told me some things about the dog I liked a lot better. So he did the breeding. I gave him money for a second pick female. And he shipped Belle Star there in heat to California, and she died on the airplane. And he had one litter. And she was nice. She was nicer. She was real straight like Tug of War, but nicer, bullier looking. And so that screwed that over. And he goes, don't worry, I'm going to breed one of my other females to him. So I don't know. I think I waited a year or something. And he had a daughter from Belle Star called Mustang Sally. And he was like, I don't want to breed her yet. I want to breed her to her grandfather, Tug of War, first. So I did that breeding. So I had to wait for that. And I don't know. I guess it was a year later. He had semen shipped in from Tyson. Well, meanwhile, the chiropractor dude was getting divorced. And he bought a Doggo Argentina, a male. And him and Tyson would fight. And he couldn't keep, you know, he said, oh, you know, the people out here in California tell me Tyson's really not a good American Bulldog. You know, he's too smash-faced, too, you know. And he seems to beat the crap out of this Doggo Argentina. So, and this guy in Texas called David Thompson had contacted him, I don't know, a year or so earlier and said, if you ever sell that dog, call me. So he called him and he bought him. I think he paid $5,000 for the dog and got him down in Texas. This guy Thompson had bought the same thing. There was a divorce, a guy going through a divorce in Texas that had a dog called Action Jackson that was Tyson's littermate brother. And he was like 40 pounds, big, huge, muscled up, wide chested dog. Well, so he got that dog and was all excited to breed him. So that guy, Jack Peeler, I was telling you about, he drove a female down and bred to him. And by the time the litter was born, that dog had died of heat stroke. He overheated. Oh, no. David Thompson had never had American Bulldogs before, so he didn't really know that they had a breathing issue. So that guy wanted to buy Tyson because he had his brother. So he got him and started freezing semen on him like crazy. And David Thompson, he used to breed monkeys. He used to breed all kinds of stuff. So he knew how to make money breeding things.
Yeah.
And so he started offering Tyson to bully people. And back then it was, it's $1,500, or I think it was like $1,500 stud fee or $1,000 in the second pick puppy. So I did 2 breedings with Tyson. And then, of course, Daly did that 1 breeding with Tyson. And I got the second pick of the litter. The pick of the litter, Daly kept. She was a big red and white puppy called 5-alarm Chili. And I kept Broadzilla, who was just a white dog with fawn eye patches. And she was kind of roly-poly fat. Like she had little fat saddlebags on her. She almost kind of looked bowed in the front and the back. Well, she grew up to be pretty amazing. And matter of fact, I'd never seen an American Bulldog like her. She had that shorter fur, lower subcutaneous fat under the skin, and muscle, like very tight muscle. And if I cut her food back for 3 days, you could see her ribs. She wouldn't lose weight, just flush the fat. I remember I used to tell my ex-wife, I said, geez, I wish I could inject that into me. I wish I would have that metabolism. Because people, I championed her out. She was the first bully champion. They had separated the breed. And I went to a show. I drove to a show in Manassas, Virginia, and showed her. And back then it was a lot harder to champion a dog out. You had to get 2 major wins, 2 best in shows, and there was all kind. You have so many dogs in the ring, so it was a lot harder to do. So I got all my points then, and then they were going to have a show here in St. Louis. I just needed like 5 points. I had my majors and everything, so I championed her, and she was the first bully champion. So my whole idea changed from these big Mastiffy, raw-looking Johnson-type dogs to this dog. I'd never seen anything like her before. She was a tighter dog. Nowadays, you see a lot of dogs like her, but back then, you had thick hides, more Mastiffy hides, tall dogs. They had muscle, but they weren't extreme muscle. So I had this dog. I pen-hipped her. She was 2A36. Her elbows were clear. So she had everything going for her. She was a good dog. She was a little quirky. Like she liked to be home. And she liked anybody that I welcomed in the house. She was fine. But if I took her to shows, man, she'd just look at me like, she wouldn't take a shit half the weekend. I'd finally pull her to a rest stop and she'd take a crap and it would be like 4 feet long. I'm like, oh my God. She was weird. She liked to be at home. And she never was mean or anything to people, but she didn't lavish affection on strangers at a dog show. She would at my house. But at a dog show, for some reason, she was always uneasy. Other than that, she was a pretty good dog, pretty good in every way. So I started with her, and I sold a couple litters, and I sold a dog to this guy in Illinois called Tony Mancera. And Tony, he was a colorful dude. And he had American Bulldogs. But anyway, he got a dog for me, Xena. And he kept telling me, dude, there's a guy I met at the pool hall here in town. He's got a really nice dog. And I'm like, oh, yeah, who's he from? He said, oh, he's from Brahma Stumpy. Well, at that Oklahoma show, Stumpy was at the show doing a weight pull thing. And don't get me wrong, she was a good dog. Like mentally, she was a good dog. She was, a champion weight pull dog. Kind of small, kind of short and small. And I'm telling you, her ass was about 2 or 3 inches higher than her head. And her front end, she had that alligator kind of width to her. She looked like an alligator in the front.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen Brahma except in pictures. He was a smaller looking, real bully dog. And he looked good. He looked muscular. But he kind of had a pinhead, like Beetlejuice head. And then I saw a litter from that before. I saw like 1 or 2 dogs that were mature, and I didn't like them at all. They kind of looked like what I thought they'd look like. So I told Tony, I said, "Oh yeah, I've seen Brahma Stumpy. I'm not a fan." So he sends me a VCR tape. That's what we did back in the day. I had a VCR tape. And I came home. I was working for a printing company, and I used to come home for lunch. And I open, of course, I find this tape, and I'm like, "Oh shit!" And so I put it in the VCR, and my jaw dropped. I was like, "Whoa, what the?" I've never seen anything like this. That dog looks like my dog Broadzilla, but more like bigger headed, bigger front end. He was 114 pounds. She was about 88. But they were kind of the same type. They were short muzzled, big head, big cheeks, big skull, big neck, big shoulders, and fat ass, and tight, real tight skin, very short fur. And he's running around this yard. At the time, Kenny, the guy who owned him, Kenny McAllister, he had a pit bull called Chance, and a male pit bull. They run together, and the dog was just real outgoing. Mufasa had a real sparkling personality. He was outgoing. He had no backup, and he was friendly, lovable dog. Of course, Kenny and his wife, that was like their kid. He slept in bed with them, and anytime I'd go to his house, the dog would sleep with me on the couch. He was very socialized and all that. And so anyway, I I immediately called Jeff Daly. I'm like, holy crap. I got this freaking video of this dog in Illinois. Man, he's the nicest looking American Bulldog I've ever seen. He looks like Godzilla, only the male version, and he's colorful, and he seems real super outgoing and just a fun dog. And of course, he's like, he's better than Tug of War. And I just started laughing. I'm like, he's way better. He's way better than anything I've ever seen. So I made copies of those videos and I sent him everywhere. And he became popular, but at first, the haters hated him. Everybody's like, I know what that dog is. He's just a game bred red nosed pit bull cross. Oh yeah, he's just a red nose, and everybody back then thought, oh, if it's got a red nose, it's a red nosed pit bull. And people people would say, oh, my cousin, he did a cross like that, an American Bulldog to a pit bull, and it turned out just like that. Shit, that's the case. Then let's get some pit bulls in here. Let's do some crosses.
Yeah, bring him over.
The people hated him at first, and so Jeff saw him, and he was like, shit. And so Tony became Kenny's manager. He became the top pimp. And Kenny was just a pet guy. Kenny had bought a dog from MGK from a similar breeding to what he always did, was what Gator bred to Doozy. But it wasn't Doozy. It was Doozy's cousin or sister. Anyway, he had this dog. I never saw the dog, but what happened was his house caught on fire. And the neighbor went in, saw smoke, and called the fire department. He went in to check if anybody was in there, and the dog was behind him, but he didn't know the dog was behind him, and he shut the door. And so the dog got smoke inhalation and died. And
oh man!
Insurance company gave him money to buy another dog, so he called Mark Landers at MGK and got Mufasa. But the day before they were going to ship the dog out, Mark called him and said, hey, do you care if I keep this dog and I'll get you a pup out of the next litter? And Kenny was just, he was, it's a pet guy. He was raring to get this dog. And he's like, no, man, I really want him. So he sent him the dog, and that was it. And when he had the dog, he thought a lot of American Bulldogs looked like him. He didn't realize that this dog is like something totally
different, unique. Yeah.
Yeah. And people for years, even today, there's people who are like, that dog was hung. The papers were hung, which the papers were hung, but they weren't hung with a different breed. They were hung because that dog Gator Red was a weight pull champion, and he pulled his cruciate tendon. And back then they didn't have a TPLO surgery. They just go in and put fish line, wrap the tendon in fish line, and it always broke and messed it up. So like, even when I saw Gator at that show in 92 or 93 or whatever it was, his one side, he had a big, fat, juicy, muscled ass. On the other side, it was paper thin. That's where his knee got messed up.
Yeah.
So Mark Landers was a giant. He was like 6'5" or 6'7" or something crazy. And he was huge. So I'm pretty sure his upper body was huge. His legs were skinny. So I'm sure he did some kind of steroids. And so there was rumors that he was giving the dog steroids, or actually the vet was giving him steroids to heal. And then they think it was maybe because he was having to give him those steroids, the dog went sterile.
Oh.
And he was the hottest thing. Gator to 100% Johnson female called Doozy produced Tyson, Action Jackson, a dog called Bushwhacker, a dog called Bull. They were all crazy looking, giant, thick, 125 to 145 pound, big headed dogs. And everybody wanted Gator Doozy, Gator Doozy, Gator Doozy. And Mark would just he kept repeating those breedings. And then he got dogs that were bred like Doozy to breed to Gator. So back then you would take deposits on puppies, and supposedly Mark had taken thousands of dollars of deposits on litters he hadn't even bred. And he had another dog that was 100% Johnson dog called Half Acre. Halfacre was the brother to that dog, O'Donnell Big Buck, Johnson's Big Buck, that Mr. Johnson used to advertise him at 154 pounds.
Wow.
Well, this Halfacre dog was a nice looking dog. He was real bully, white dog. He kind of had a shitty temperament, like not skittish. He was just aggressive. You know, if you weren't, if he would bite a person at the drop of a hat if they did anything wrong or anything. He had zero backup to him. And he'd bred Doozy to him before, and it produced, they didn't know what it was at the time, but it produced ichthyosis. It produced this big, beautiful dog called Lucky Lou. Lucky Lou. They sold him to somebody. This dog was like 125 pounds. He was a pretty cool looking dog, but he got him back because the dog had ick. And with that ick, if you ever raised a dog with ick, it stinks. It smells like fish, and the dog's skin's always flaky, and sometimes they produce a lot of oil, so they look dirty. You know, a matter of fact, there was somebody got a dog from a combination like that. They called her Dirty Mary or something like that, because they have oil, so they pick up every dirt, dust, everything.
Yeah.
So Gator was sterile. Half the time, you know, he wouldn't produce puppies, and he had a long list of people that wanted pups. So he threw Halfacre in with Doozy. The only problem with that is Doozy's father was a dog called Dozer Bruno, and Dozer Bruno and Halfacre, Mr. Johnson would call them backdoor brothers. He would say they're backdoor brothers because their parents were brother and sister. So
Okay.
Machine Buckaroo and Machine Susie Q were the parents on one, you know, brother and sister. And then the other side was, Machine Buckaroo. Oh, Mean Machine and Sugar Doll 20. They were brother and sister. So they're bred exactly the same. They're just from different siblings. And it was, you know, the father from one side was the brother to the mother on the other side.
Okay.
So when they bred it, that was kind of like an inbreeding, 75% the same blood, you know, as an inbreeding. And that's what produced Brahma. I ended up having Brahma. Long story, weird story. And Brahma, when I had him, he was older. He was like 8 years old, and he was like 72 pounds. He kind of lost a lot of muscle, and he was getting kind of raggedy, older looking. Kenny McAllister and I drove to Colorado to pick him up. There used to be a guy called Pete Vella. He's an Italian guy. He used to think he was my cousin. We're good friends. He was a nice guy. He owned a pizzeria in Hattiesburg, Pennsylvania, and he'd buy dogs. You know, he owned a restaurant, so we kind of had that in common. And I didn't realize, but I think he gambled quite a bit, and so he'd won a bunch of money. And he called me and said, "Hey, man, I heard the guy that owns Brahma wants to sell him." And I'm like, "Dude, he's like 8 years old. I wouldn't buy him. He's too old." He goes, "Dude, he's Mufasa's dad. Don't you think I could sell quite a few breedings off of him?" I'm like, "Oh yeah. I'd want to breed to him just because whatever made Mufasa, why not try that?"
Yeah.
Long story short, he paid like $7,000 for the dog. And he called me and said, "Hey, if I got Brahma, would you keep him for me?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think I want to mess with that." "Dude, come on, man. I'll let you breed to him all you want." So I talked to Kenny, and Kenny's like, "Dude, I can drive out there with you and get him." So we drive out to Colorado, to Pueblo, Colorado. And what was going on? Oh, Mark Landers and I didn't like each other. He was a big steroid freak, kind of a bully dude. He talked shit to people and threatened them, and he'd beat people up. You know, I guess he had roid rage or whatever it was. And he was huge. He was like, I don't know, he was 6'5", 6'7". He was gigantic.
Yeah.
And he had gotten in some trouble, and he hated me. And the last person he'd want to have that dog would be me. And the guy that owned him was a guy called Shane something. And I didn't know what the deal was, why he was getting rid of the dog. So the guy, Pete, told me, "Vito, just don't let them know that it's you. Just let Kenny pick up the dog." So I had to wait at the gas station. I'm sitting in the gas station watching them exchange dogs, because if that Shane guy knew it was me, then he would think there'd be repercussions. And
Correct.
And when Landers gets out, he'd be like, "I told you, I don't want that guy having my dog."
Yeah.
Anyway, we drive the dog back, and I get this dog, and he looks bad. Like his testicles were peeling. Like he wasn't taken care of, and his ass was paper thin. He had muscle. He had a lot of muscle. He had tight fur and tight skin, and he had a little bully head, real bully, and he had a wide front end. He was built like a kite. He was really wide in the front and then narrow hips.
Yeah.
So I wasn't impressed with him. And he was weird. Like you could tell he was kind of quiet, and he didn't, never was aggressive towards us. As soon as they handed us the leash, he was fine. He never didn't act weird. So we drive back. I get him at my house, and at the old house I had a big, huge concrete patio I put in. It was like 40 foot long. And, I'd always have dog toys out there. So I brought him out there by himself, and I'm like, I'm going to, grab a tennis ball and throw it. So I put the tennis ball over my head to throw it, and he blinked his eyes and lowered his head to the ground like I was going to hit him. And he's been abused. He'd been beat. And, you couldn't convince me anything different, that somebody smacked this dog. So the truth I found out later, but probably what happened. But the guy, Pete, he's on the phone like, B, take him to the vet. Take him to the vet. Let's collect him. I'm like, okay. So I take him to my vet that I go to, and they happen to be like the reproductive specialist of the time. I mainly dealt with the one partner that was a pen hip guy was my buddy, but the owner of the clinic, Dr. Thornsberry, he was the reproductive guy. So I get in there. This is in the swanky part of town, Chesterfield, Missouri. All the nickel millionaires live out there, and they're swamped. It's a big practice. And so I'm in there with this dog. I don't know anything about the dog. He's fine with me, but he seemed a little suspicious and strange. And so Thornsberry's like, fill out the paperwork. I'm kind of in a rush. Let me collect him. So he's leaning over the dog to collect him. Like, I better hold him. He's not my dog. I didn't raise him or anything.
Yeah.
I could tell he just didn't act normal. He wasn't wagging his tail. He was acting weird. He said, no, I'm fine. So I'm on a stool filling out this paperwork, and I'm looking over, and the doctor readjusted himself, like moved his foot like to get better balance. As soon as he did that dog launched himself at the guy. And he had a sweatshirt on, and it backed him up, and the dog almost bit him right here, and it ripped his teeth kind of slid off his pec.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa. I'm grabbing him, pull him up, and I'm punching him in the head. Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And he peed himself. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I told you I didn't raise this dog. He's been abused. I thought he'd been abused.
Yeah.
And he's like, did he have a rabies? I'm like, yeah, he had all that stuff done. So I get him home, and turns out his semen is no good. He's got a really badly infected prostate. So they send me home with like $300 worth of Baytril, this antibiotic. And so I give him Baytril. I'm telling Pete, we're going to have to wait because he's got an infection. Then I'll start collecting him again. Well, meanwhile, Pete's selling breedings to him. And I get a guy from Colorado, a Mormon guy. I can't remember his name. He's related to the people that have the Rocky Mountain Bulldogs or whatever.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Anyway, they shipped me this female, and she was an MGK dog off a Red Hot and something. I forget what. No. It was a dog down from a delivery. So I do the AI. I'm telling Pete, I'm like, he's had just a week and a half of this stuff. He has 4 or 5 more pills to go. And so the dog got pregnant, but she only had like 1 or 2 puppies. Well, I had a tug of war daughter that came into heat, who I never liked her temperament either. She had that little bit of that weird temperament like him.
Yeah.
mean. She wasn't aggressive. She never did anything to anybody, but she was a little odd, a little weird. And so I bred those two together, and she only had 2 puppies. And then every time I brought him back to collect them, his white blood cell count was super high and his semen was no good. And I started realizing this dog is kind of screwy. He's not, I thought he was a sweetheart that'd been abused, and he wasn't. He may have been abused. Maybe somebody did something, but it was that weird temperament and it comes from that dog, Machine Buckaroo, and his sister, Machine Susie Q, because it's reoccurred over and over. They've produced it. That Rebel Rouser, his mom was Machine Susie Q. That dog, Half Acre, he acted weird. That dog was he was from Machine Susie Q and the Mean Machine. And so it was always like Machine Buckaroo, Machine Susie Q. And that dog Dozer, he was a weird dude. Like that guy who owned him, Dave Fartnett, he would say, he's like the 5th meanest dog in the world. He doesn't like anybody, me and my dad and my kids. Other than that, he'll kill you. He'll kill you. This and that. And it's really like a fear biter. I don't know what it is. It's some insecure, weird fear biter stuff. And it kind of reoccurred. All those Rebel Rouser dogs, Peeler's Chief, a lot of those, they produce dogs just like that. That some of them actually bit people. And instead of, the breeder or the owner putting the dog down, they just give it away or sell it to somebody.
Yeah. There is a question, Vito. They're asking if maybe you could touch on this. Mufasa and Ellerby Champagne.
Ellerby Champagne, I remember Mr. Johnson telling me about her. That guy, James Ellerby, was a really nice old guy from, he probably wasn't that old when he died, like in his 50s. I think he hadn't even retired. But him and Johnson were cool. Mr. Johnson really liked him. He was originally from, I think, South Carolina or North Carolina. And as a kid, he was always crazy about dogs. And in that little town, they had those white American type bulldogs back then. And he told me stories about, at the general store, they used to sell them. The guy across the street had a turkey ranch, he said, turkey ranch, and he had a dog called Brock that was named after the owner. He said, man, I love that dog. He was cool. So his dad died when he was a kid, like 9 or 10 years old, and they had to move back to where his mother's people were from, which was from Philly. So he and his whole family moved to Philly because that's where her family was. Mm-hmm. And he said when he grew up, he always wanted one of those dogs. And he tried, he'd write letters to his family. He'd even send them money. And they even would tell him, yeah, I got one. And then he'd go down there and they're like, no, we just wanted to see you. So he actually got hooked up with David Levitt in the 70s. Yeah, late 70s. Levitt, or maybe early 80s, Levitt had just started crossing dogs to make the Old English Bulldog. And Dave Levitt placed dogs with him. So he had some dogs. And he was like, yeah, I kind of want a bulldog, like a country bulldog, like what I had when I saw when I was a kid. So he told me that he had a female that was bred there. She didn't have a litter. And he said it was like Thursday. And he said, I wasn't sure if she was in heat or delivering, whelping puppies yet, but she was panting a little bit. And he said, but I didn't get paid till Friday. So I thought I'd just wait, see if she has them natural. Yeah. He says, Friday I had to go to work. And when I got home from work, I thought I'm going to rush her right to the vet. And when he got home, she was dead. She had died. And he told me that Dave Levitt flipped out and told him, don't ever breed dogs again. You should have called me. I would have, done everything. He said, well, I didn't know, I wasn't planning on her dying. Yeah. And he was a guy from the country. He thought dogs have puppies, they've been doing it for years. They don't need us. So that was the end of his relationship. Well, months before that, he was over at Dave Levitt's and he saw what was now Sugar Doll, the first Sugar Doll. The first Sugar Doll was I think she was in Pennsylvania. Johnson had sold them to people as a puppy. And something happened. Their kid was allergic or something. And so they couldn't keep her anymore. So instead of them shipping the dog back and that, he called Ellerby and said, if you want this, or Dave Levitt, who had just done the breedings, with his dog.
Yeah.
Or no, Dave Levitt was wanting to lease a female. So he said, hey, there's a dog in Pennsylvania. These people, they can't keep her. If you want to take her and do the breeding, and then I'll just take her back. So that was the sugar doll that he did the English Bulldog breeding with. And then he shipped a female called King's Lady Grace to him and did that. Although it's weird, I saw an interview Dave Levitt did I thought he said he didn't breed her or he didn't want any puppies off of that King's Lady Grace because she had prolapsed. So I don't know what what from, but that's so this James Ellerby was kind of like he was in the middle of a lot of history going on. So then he was out of the old English Bulldogs, the Levitt dogs, and he called Johnson, and they became pretty good friends. Mr. Johnson really respected him because I talked to him on the phone once or twice. He was a really nice man, really soft-spoken, very nice, and he was a dog nut. Like he lived in a row house in Pennsylvania, and if anybody knows what a row house is, they're just all shotgun, narrow, deep, and then your backyard might be a little patio. It's not a big yard. Yeah. And that dude had dogs everywhere. He had the whole basement full of dogs, and he had some pretty famous dogs back then. King's Bruiserbo the 4th or 6th or something like that. And so Johnson told me that he had friends or knew somebody that had, I guess they were like a inner city dog fight. And there was a black female that had lost, and they told people that she was a pit bull black Labrador. And they said, his friend said they were going to kill her. They're going to put her down because she lost. Or I don't know, something like that. And he said, oh, no, I'll take her. I'd love to have a black bulldog. So he called Johnson. Johnson got her registered with the ARF, and he did a breeding with her. And that's what produced the first black dogs that were kind of close to bully dogs. They were Johnson dogs bred to this dog. Champagne was her name. And he told people that he was told she was a Labrador pit bull mix. Now, the people that messed with that blood early on would get blue dogs. And because of the attitude and of the female and that, they don't think it was a Labrador. They think it was a Neapolitan Mastiff, because if back then there was a band dog movement on the East Coast that started from a guy called Swifford, Dr. Swifford, and he took Neapolitan Mastiffs to game bred pit bulls. Matter of fact, there's a book called The World of Fighting Dogs. That guy talks about the band dog crosses that were done with the Neapolitan Mastiff were gamier, tougher dogs. If they put the English Mastiff in or the Bull Mastiff, they didn't usually have. So it was probably true. Maybe it was. The dog, she looked like a raggedy, kind of ugly looking bitch. But cool looking dogs, So the Johnson, and it wasn't the 7/8 rule or nothing like that. It was just Johnson picked up the phone and said, my friend's got this dog. I want you to register her and register the litter. So the dogs were half American Bulldog, or whatever Mr. Johnson concocted as the American Bulldog, bred to pit bulls probably for sure. We just don't know if it was a Labrador or a Neapolitan Mastiff. And that's probably the first bully black dogs. There are other black dogs, but they're all standard type. And in the standard side, there was a lot of solid colored brindle or red dogs. And so heavy colored dogs were a thing. In the Johnson dogs, though, they got culled or given away or hidden.
That's where a lot of the color comes on the American Bulldogs.
Yeah, like people hated on me because I had heavy colored dogs and black dogs. But people don't want to read a pedigree. They weren't 100% Johnson dogs. I wasn't. They were, going back, my first outcross, I started doing outcrosses because I started to realize, hey, there's something going on here. This Mr. Johnson may not be telling me the truth.
Yeah.
Because back then it was the American Bulldog is a Southern catch dog. It was a dog that could work a farm, kill varmints, guard the farm, guard your kids. And then when you want to go hog hunting, he'll catch a wild boar and hold it. And down south, it's hot. I live right on the jet stream. So we in Missouri, we get that humid, soupy weather. And sometimes we get the northern jet stream. It's not so bad, but it's hot, humid, 80, 90 degrees. And so the dog has to be able to catch, and when a dog's catching a wild boar, it's not a casual thing. It's an all out wrestling match. They're holding, and so if they're going to get hot, their throat's going to shut. It's going to happen really quick.
Yeah.
So the whole gist of the breed, I read the history. I read Mr. Johnson would say, we did this and we did that. But I was starting to realize, and then I sold the dog off of Mufasa. I think it was off Mufasa and my dog Xena. And I sold to these people in Virginia. And they were maybe 4 or 5 years younger than me, but nice couple. We became friends. You know how you sell a dog and you become friends? People call a month or talk. And they sent me pictures. The dog was beautiful. He was really a nice looking bully dog, like beautiful. He had one blue eye and he had a black brindle patch on this side. And then he had a black brindle, I think it was dark brindle or black brindle. And anyway, they'd go to work and they put their dog out in the yard. They had a big 5-foot fence. They just put him out in the yard and he hung out in the yard all day till they got home. And I think it was springtime. It wasn't quite summer yet. So it was only like 80, maybe 80 degrees. It wasn't too bad. Well, the neighbor next door had a detached garage that sat right close to the property line. And they didn't know this, but they had a crew of roofers coming. So all these men are on top of that garage, ripping the shingles off and putting a new roof on there. So all day that dog is barking his ass off, going crazy.
Yeah.
And so when the kids would get home from school, they had like a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old or something like that. So they open the gate, they come in the backyard, and the dog is dead. There's blood coming out of his mouth. He'd overheated. And I remember they told me that, man, that was like the first time in the breed my blood ran cold. I was like, God, what the hell? What a memory for 2 little boys.
Yeah.
And see their dog dead. I mean, dead. It's horrific. Their blood coming out of his mouth. Yeah. So I was like, I thought, I don't want to do this. I don't want to breed. I don't want that shit to happen. It's like, what is going on, man? This is a Southern catch dog, dude. I mean, he should be able to bark all day in the backyard. And so then I started seeing other things. I'd go to shows and, I went to a show in Oklahoma and they had a bunch of giant Johnson dogs and it was inside and it wasn't like the middle of summer and 100 degrees. It was like early summer, spring, 75 degrees, maybe 80. And these dogs their tongues are turning purple and they're overheating and people are rushing them to a hose to hose them off. And I'm like, what the hell? And I was so stupid. I thought, oh, they must have socialized the dog and the dog's nervous. I didn't understand why they're hyperventilating and overheating. And they're like, there was a show. There was that guy, Jack Peeler. He bought one of these trailers, like with a tandem axle, and it had a box. Box, had air conditioning and heating. And you put your dog in there, like all aluminum looking, fancy. Well, he bought one, but it didn't have an air conditioner. And he went to a show, and he had two pups off this dog, Action Jacks, that were just crazy, outrageous looking dogs. And the dogs in the front, there's a vent that lets air in and rushes across the kennels. And they laid on the vent, so no air was getting in. So these dogs are down the highway in this aluminum box, and they're cooking. And they get to the show, die. They had blue tongues. They're hosing them down and barely saved their lives. Well, Peeler traded that in and got one with air conditioning. And a lot of people started getting with air conditioning. And I saw that all the time. That was kind of commonplace. There was a I got divorced, I think, in 2004. And there was a 2004, 2005, there used to have this huge show called The Heart of Dixie. These people put it on, and it was always usually in Alabama or Georgia. Usually it was in Alabama, I think. As a matter of fact, I think the first one was in Birmingham, and that's where I got a lot of points to champion out Broadzilla 2. That was their first show. And there was like 250 dogs at that show, and most of them were standard. Most of them were standard dogs. They were bigger than the bully dogs, believe it or not, back then. Hard to believe. You go to a show now, and if there's 5 standard dogs, you're lucky to see them. So I went to that show, and there was, I noticed dogs overheating and stuff all the time. And then that happened to me. I never thought anything of it because I didn't work my dogs back then. I had, I'd take it for a walk. But if it was 95 degrees, I'm not walking. I'm going to wait till it's cool.
Yeah.
And I had air conditioning. I had a kennel I built next to my garage, and it had a heater and an air conditioner in there. I'd go in there. I'd have a fan and a little window air conditioner on. It was like an ice box. And then there was a giant, like 75-year-old shade tree that shaded the outdoor kennels. So it wasn't realistic what I had. It wasn't, the dogs were pampered. And like I said, I didn't work them, so I didn't know. I had no idea. And Johnson would tell me, no, they're good. And then I used to always visit Mr. Johnson, maybe sometimes 2 or 3 times a year. And if I went there in the summertime, one time especially, it happened more than once, but one time I remember we pull in the driveway and he comes up and he goes, I hate to ask you fellas, but Rebel Rouser 59 or whatever, he died. We had a thunderstorm come up and lightning hit him. So I'm like, damn, it's like hot, man. It's like 100 degrees in Georgia. And I'm like, all right, screw it. So me and this other guy, we get these shovels he's got, and I go to dig the hole in the pen, in the yard. And this dog was huge. He was fat, huge, fatty, and he was starting to, bloat up. I thought he was going to pop. We go to dig. Well, I'm from Missouri, man. We got rocks and roots and clay. Yeah. It's a workout to dig a hole. You want to go 3 feet down, you got to be a He-Man to do that shit. And a breaking bar to break up the rocks. It's hard. Well, in Georgia, where Johnson lived, he lived close to a river. It was all like digging at the beach. It was all like loomy dirt and sand. So in 10 minutes, we got, about 2 feet deep. And Johnson's like, that's enough. That's enough. I said, no, we should dig down deeper, down to 3 feet or something. No, that's good. That's good. So I'm like totally grossed out. I don't even want to touch this dog. So the guy that I'm with, he just grabs it. And there's a puppy in the yard, like a 5-month-old puppy. And he's pulling this giant dog. And like I said, he was bloated. It was making me sick. And the puppy gets tangled in and falls in the hole too. So I gotta grab him. And so we cover him up. And it looked like a mound. It looked like a bump, Yeah. And I always noticed there were all these bumps like that, and there was grass growing over in all the yards. I thought, they raked all the shit up. So many people were raking shit up in a pile.
Yeah.
No, those are dead dogs.
Oh man,
that was like right outside his back door. He'd have the nicer yard. So I started realizing, hey man, there is a problem here, And still, I had no idea. So I started thinking, I'm going to fix this shit. All you got to do is outcross to a standard dog that has no problem breathing, and then breed back your stuff, and it's gone, right? Easy. 1 generation. I'll fix everything. Yeah. So I had a friend that lived in Mississippi. He was an older guy at the time called Jack Robinson, and he retired, and his son-in-law bought him a bulldog from down there. And he fell in love with the dogs, and it was a bulldog from a strain in Mississippi called the Man of War. There's a lot of mystery. Nobody really knows what the hell Man of War was. But supposedly the rumor was he was a game dog. He was a game type American bulldog. He was big, but he was, I guess, fought or whatever, who knows? And he was written up in the Journal. The Journal was like the underground magazine for dog fighters. And he was a champion, or, Man of War was a legendary dog. But there's no pictures of him, nothing. And there was, and he was solid brindle. Joe Reed was like, solid brindle. He was solid brindle. And those dogs were either solid brindle, solid white, or solid red. Well, and nobody liked them because they looked like giant pit bulls. At least that's what people thought back then. Oh, that's just a pit bull, which I even thought so too. I'm like, it's just a pit bull. There was a dog called Vader Red, who's from that bloodline, line bred on Man of War, and he was all deep, really mahogany red. And he was supposed to be a gamey dog that could do anything. He was a performance type dog. Well, Jack started with those dogs, and he bred them. And like I said, early, like in the 90s, you could breed a bunch of ugly standard dogs and sell them for $1,000, all the puppies, because it was kind of a rare breed, a new thing. And the whole bully craze hadn't really caught on. There were Johnson people, and then there were Scott. They call them Scott, were the standard type. So he had those. And then I guess he started seeing, the big money was in the big dogs size. So he bought a dog from Jack Peeler that actually was the brother to the uncle to my big dog. And he was a dog called Okie. They advertised him in Dog World. He was dark brindle, and he had some like a brindle patch on one side, and he was marked up pretty nice. He was like a 120-pound dog, big. So Jack would take Man of War females and breed them to this dog. And it freaked me out because he produced big monster dogs with huge fat rears, like really wide, as wide in the back end as in the front. And he produced a dog called Bigfoot, Robinson's Bigfoot. He was colored almost like a St. Bernard. And I'm telling you, this dog had bone, like somebody measured his front paw, and they said it's 4 inches across, which he had crazy bone. He had a huge head with a weird muzzle, and it had, from the profile, it had a bump, kind of like a mastiffy kind of muzzle, but it was tight. And he had a huge rear end, nice angulation, kind of a raw looking dog. And he produced a lot of big females. They're like 100-pound females, beautiful conformation, nice rear ends. So I thought, that's it. I'll breed to that Man of War blood, but he's already got some Johnson blood in there, and I'll probably get some nice looking pups. So I had a female puppy I produced from my big giant dog. Oh, and that's how we became friends. I had the biggest freaking dog, that dog Rebel Machines Explosion, my dog Boomer. And Jack had his cousin, I guess, Bigfoot. And Jack was all about size, big. And so he had a female from me called Monica Lewinsky. That was back when all the Clinton stuff was going on. So he had Monica Lewinsky, and I think I sold her. Yeah, I sold it to another guy first that was in Mississippi. And the guy was a bully type guy, and he hated the dog because the dog got to be like 28 inches tall. She was like a tall, if you got a big American Bulldog that's super tall, they look like crap. They don't look bully. They don't look thick. Yeah. They look cool till they pop. And so I told him I'll give him another dog and to send it to Jack. Oh my God, Jack, it was like Christmas for him because all he cared about was big. And that bitch got to be 125 pounds. She was humongous. So he bred Bigfoot to her and produced this puppy that looked fantastic. And he had him, and I'm like, dude, send him to me. I'll show him. I'll test him. I'll do his hips. I'll do everything. You can breed to him anytime you want. I joke with him. I said, you can have all the TV rights, movie rights.
Yeah.
His dog, his name was Vindicator, and he was really dark, colored up kind of like a St. Bernard. He had eye patches. He was really a cool dog. I should have bred him more. So I put him in there, and he was probably let's see. He was probably 3/8 Man of War, and then he had an 1/8 Painter, and so he was like 50% Johnson, I guess. And I bred him a couple times, but I was worried. I started getting a couple solid colored dogs from him. And I started getting dogs, the first crosses, because they were total outcrosses. No relation except Gator Red. And it was a very small bit. So I get, I did a breeding with him and Broadzilla. That was my one kind of outcross litter. And pups look great. The girls look great. They're huge. And you know what? I got kink tails. I got kinky, weird tails and stuff. I dock tails. And they were big bully. And there was only one male, and his name was Spawn. He was like 195 or 100 pounds, but he was sucked up. And matter of fact, Pat Gargett bought him. He was buying a lot of dogs from me back then. He got him and did weight pull with him and worked him, and he'd hang from a rope for like days. But he had an attitude, man. Like, he had huge teeth too. I've never seen it. He had teeth like a timber wolf. I mean, like this big. And but the girls were different. They were thicker, Johnson-y kind of looking. But I'd sold females to people, and man, I got like 4 of them back, or they either got put down because they got to a certain age, and there was one bad story after another of they weren't outwardly dog aggressive, but if another dog put their paw on them or tried to start shit, they would just kill. So I had a female, I pen hipped her, and she was like 0.5, 0.6 or something like that. So, and she was a good looking dog, but she wasn't that great that I would breed a dog with those hips. And I thought, I never saw any signs of her being aggressive and ever towards anything, any other dogs. But she was a puppy. She was only like 6 months or 5 months old. And there was a lady here in St. Louis, and she was an older lady that was kind of, I think she was in a wheelchair. I can't remember. And her husband was fine. He was fine. She wasn't that old. She was probably in her 50s. I was in my 30s. So everybody seemed old. And so I placed the dog with her, and she had all these little Frenchies and Boston Terriers. And she had a female bull mastiff, huge, like 150-pound bull mastiff. And I took her over there. She was fine. Everything was great. And I left her there. And 6 months go by, and she starts calling me. I'm a little worried. I'm like, why? What's going on? She goes, now she's good with the little dogs. The little dogs can do anything to her, but I don't know. She gets real jealous of the big bull mastiff, and she'll attack her. And I said, she attacks her? What do you mean? She's like 9 months old. She's not even half her size, probably. She goes, she don't give a shit, Vito. She doesn't give a shit. So I'm like, I told her, do this, do that, blah, blah, blah. Well, 7-8 months later, her husband calls me. I need you to get over here quick. I'm like, what? What's going on? I'm at work. And he goes, this dog's nuts. She wants to kill Blossom. I remember the bull mastiff's name was Blossom. And I said, well, what? Tell her no. Put her in a crate. Put her in a different room. Put her outside. Oh, you don't understand. She's chewing the airplane crate. She's got blood everywhere. She wants that dog, man. We can't hold her back. So I'm like, what is going on? So I leave work early. I go get her. I bring her home, and I put her in a kennel, by herself. And thinking of it. Well, I think that they've been fighting, and they just didn't tell me, because there's no way the dog just flipped a switch and all this. Yeah. And so I thought, I'll give her a day or two, bond with her a little bit, and then I'll put her with her dad, see how she does. Her dad, and like I said, her dad was 148 pounds, 29 inches. Like, he was
he's huge dog. Yeah.
Big old dog.
And he was dog aggressive. He was stupid dog aggressive. He wouldn't mess with puppies, and he was fine with the female as long as she didn't try to attack him or do anything. But his big wish in life was to grab a hold of another male. He really was. He was stupid like that, and there was no controlling him. I was probably about 220, and I would water ski across the grass at parks when if a pit bull or a Rottweiler or something growled at him or something, I was skiing across the grass with that dog. So I let the puppy with him. That crazy bitch, she didn't care, man. She's latching onto his face. I had breaking sticks and break her off. So I had to put her down. I couldn't put her with anybody. because
Yeah.
if they didn't have dogs, I couldn't take the risk. What if the neighbor got a dog?
Yeah.
I don't know what her deal was. And I had that kind of reoccurring thing with the Man of War blood, I guess. I don't know if it was just Man of War, if it was just a blend. I sold a dog to a dog groomer. And, dog groomers, if you groom dogs, you know how to handle dogs that want to bite you,
Yeah.
They might be cool, but you should be savvy around dogs. But she's calling me and telling me that her boyfriend has a Rottweiler border collie, and he's real jealous of her, and he's been beating her up her whole life. Like if somebody tries to pet her, he'll just attack her. And I'm like, well, don't let him do that. Tell him no, put him in, and so little things would go on. And she's like, a couple of times, she's like, my boyfriend said, if I don't get rid of this dog, he's going to kill her. And I'm like, well, she's getting attacked. Why would he do that? So I don't know, a year or so goes by, and I don't know how I thought about messaging her, or no, back then there was no messaging. I must have called her, and she told me, yeah, he broke up with me, and we moved out. And I'm like, what happened? She goes, we went to work, and we put my female in the bathroom, and the Rottweiler broke the door. And this has happened a couple of times, and beat her up.
What the heck?
And she said, but this time we came home to a puddle of blood, and he was dead.
Oh, man.
Our relationship couldn't survive the death.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Right.
whoa. And Spawn, he could have been like that too, maybe. But Patrick is a dog guy, and he's had pit bulls. So he knew how to handle a dog that was dog aggressive. But that was my first outcross, was the Man of War blood. And I thought it cleaned things up because the first generation off of Vindicator breathed good. But as soon as I went back to my blood, that was what happened for like 10 years. I would do an outcross, thought it was fixed, then line breed back on my dogs, and they would just keep popping up. I'd have dogs that could breathe good, and then I'd produce litters of dogs that breathe like chainsaws. So,
did you ever think of maybe switching it up? Maybe go 2 generations, let's say standard, and then bring it back to your stuff?
Yeah, I did. Eventually, I did all that stuff. My next outcross was, I was looking at Dog World. They took out a big ad. There was a guy in upstate New York, Gail Raponi. He had a kennel called Tough Enough American Bulldogs. And he had these black and white, really thick looking dogs. He had a dog called Badger. And he's got pictures of him hanging from a rope. And they're thick. And he had a brother called Panda, and he'd picture them side by side. He sent me a video of the two male dogs, playing tug of war, and they won't fight or anything. And those dogs were, back in the day, they had a guy called Bill Heintzman in Texas, and he would buy these Florida or South Carolina type white hog dogs that had no pedigrees, but they were at a place called Jay Dorsey's Trophy Hunting Lodge. And he'd just buy local dogs, and he'd use them if they worked as a catch dog, because his place was like a trophy hunting lodge. He'd buy hogs, and he'd raise them in these wild boar and raise them in these pens till they got to be 200-300 pounds, 400 pounds. And then you'd come down from New York, wherever, you pay a couple $1,000 to do like a canned hunt. They let the hog loose in a big area, and then the dog, I guess, bay dogs would bay it, and the catch dog would catch it, and then you'd come up, stab him behind the back leg and kill him, and then you'd mount his head for a big trophy. Pay thousands of dollars for that. So he had these dogs that did it, and this Bill Heinz guy got a hold of the guy, bought a bunch of his females, and then he got a dog that had a little bit of Johnson in him called Country Boy, and a dog called Boss Man. So he did those crosses. So that's kind of what this guy had. But he had another cross. At the time, I had no idea. You don't know. You just go by what the pedigree says or what people tell you. It was a dog called Aslan. Really cool looking dog. I remember seeing him. There used to be these big shows in Manassas, Virginia, like in the 90s, and they'd sell videotapes. So I'd buy the videotapes. I remember putting in And I noticed this cool looking dog. He had a black saddle, real shiny black saddle, and he was thick. He was like a bully dog, but he didn't have a real short muzzle. But he was real thick, and he could do hang time. He could do all this stuff. And that was that dog, Aslan. And Aslan, and he was a big black saddle, black eye patch. It was kind of Johnson-y looking, but not English bulldoggy undershot. He was thick. And so that dog was used. There's a guy in upstate New York, Aspen Rare. I forget the guy's name. Sanders. He used all those. He had dogs from Bill Heinz. He had a female called Combat that was like line bred, really nice, stout. She was a standard, but she was kind of a thick, short dog. And he crossed to that man of war dog, that dog I said, Beta Red. Yeah. And he also crossed to Aslan. At the time, Aslan, his pedigree read that his father went back to standard performance, Bama Boy blood. I didn't know. I had no reason to question it. But years later, I found out from the guy that what happened was there was a guy on the East Coast called Louis Maldarati, and he was a trash man. And then he bred dogs. And he had, I mean, this is all I heard. Didn't have any firsthand experience, but he had oldie bulldogs. He had painter type standard dogs. He had Johnson dogs. And they said whatever you were looking for, that's what he had. If you were looking for an oldie,
yes.
And so this guy, Ryan Sherry, he was a tattoo artist, and he was a kid. He was a kid back then. He bought a female from him, and she was supposed to be mainly Johnson with some painter in her. And he said she wasn't very big, and she was real bully, and she was mainly red, almost all red. And he said, I didn't know. He said, I met the guy in a gas station. He said, he was a big Italian guy, drove a Coupe de Ville Cadillac. And he'd say, he'd have a little plastic file, and he'd go through and he'd pick out papers and hand it to him. And he said he worked the dog and took him to like a protection training place and got into doing stuff. And he said she was a good dog, but he said, I heard rumors that there was Levitt. The guy had Levitt oldies, and that this dog probably got some Levitt oldie in her. He said, but no, we didn't know for sure, but she didn't look like a Johnson dog. She had too much red color, and she wasn't really big. And so this place that he went to, there was a dude that would go there, and he had a dog that was like trained in protection, and he was a black and white dog. And he said the dog looked like a standard dog in the head. He said, and there were some features to him that almost looked like a giant bull terrier to his body. A real thick body. He said this was trained like a Schutzen 1, something crazy. Well, he was in high school, about ready to go to college, and he said we were there all the time. And so the owner, and so that guy came one day and went there and left his dog and said, hey, I got to get out of town. I got to get out of here. I'll be back for him, but I got to get out of town or I'm going to go on a government vacation for 10 years. So he never picked him up. Well, the trainer guy's like, what am I going to do with this dog? I don't have room for just some random dog. So they're like, dude, I'll take him. He said, take him. And he said he went away to college, and he said he was a cool freaking dog. He was so smart. He said he used to go to parties with us. Everybody'd be drunk, and they'd put stick notes all over the dog, and the dog was just cool with everybody. He said he was the best freaking dog. And I'm like, well, what was he? He said, well, he looked like a standard American bulldog that was really, really thick, and he was black and white. Well, he crossed that. I don't know who got him papers or what, but he put that in with the Heinz dog, and that's down 4 generations down from that is where that black came from those dogs. And that female, I bought a female called Dinah. She was a small, like 75-pound bitch. Kind of looked standard, but not really. She's a little shorter. And that was my next attempt. Here, I got a hog dog, man. I'm going to use this hog dog, clean everything up. Problem solved.
Yeah. But I know, man, you know what? We're coming to our end here. We're running out of time. But definitely I want to have you for second part because there's
part 2.
Yes.
We haven't got out of the ABs yet, and we still got to get to the Brazilian stuff too.
But
we want to tap into all of that.
Yeah, Vito, I
tend to talk. I tend to just go on and on.
No, that's great. It's a lot of history.
From Shane, you know, he's getting into the ABs, so I know this question is for you. It's like, with all your knowledge, Vito.
What bloodline? I'm the wrong person to ask, because I pretty much, you know, my experience with the dogs and my bloodline that I do and the way I breed is like nobody else. Matter of fact, over the years I've had, you know, friends, people that have my dogs, and they scratch their heads like, "Why did Vito keep that dog for? What do you do this? What do you do that?" You know, because I tried a whole bunch of things to clean up and improve, and I kept dogs that most people were like, "Oh God, what are you keeping a bird dog for?" But I'm not, you know. I have a different. I'm different than the bully people. The bully crowd, you know, everybody has what they like. I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong, but I don't really know. I'm not really that. I think I had bought a dog that had your dog in it that I really liked, and yes. I think I messaged you. I messaged my, because I didn't really know. I was not into that scene for like 15 years, so I can tell you a lot more stuff about standard dogs that I've used recently than in the bully stuff. So it's kind of hard to say. I like Braveheart. There
you go.
There you go.
All right.
There's your answer.
Thank you, Vito, for sure. Shane, hopefully he answered your question. But Vito's been doing this for a while, so I could say he has his own bloodline, and it's Braveheart, you know, Bulldog. So
yeah, I quit counting. I think I'm at like 14 or 15 generations.
Oh wow, that's a big deal.
It is. All right, gentlemen. Well, I'm having some technical difficulties right now, but thank you for all. Guys, catch us again next Wednesday, 6 o'clock. Vito, I'll get with you to do second part, because this was great, man.
Yeah, please. I appreciate it. Thanks for coming. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Right.
We'll see you hopefully soon, and we'll do it again.
All right, definitely. Sounds good.
All right, thank you, Vito.
Thanks.
Have a good night. Okay.
You too.
My mouse went out, so I'm trying to charge it so I could turn on. So.
A real behind the scenes look. You need a hire IT guy now.